Thanks, Casey. This is Samantha Eisner. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Do we need a motion on that, Chris?
No, you can just go ahead and call it to order.
Okay. Then we'll call to order at 6:11 p.m. Thank you so much for waiting. And then, Chris, if you can have you and your team help lead the Pledge of Allegiance and the pledge.
Sure. If we could ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Put your right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Casey, would you do the Goethe Pledge?
As a citizen of the world, I will follow Goethe's circle of learning. Curiosity opens my mind, ideas lead to knowledge, responsible choices show respect, cooperation strengthens others, learners are courageous, empathy creates community.
And let's have, if I could ask Ms. Akbaba, would you do the honors on the German version?
Yes, als ein Bürger dieser Welt folge ich dem Kreis des Lernens. Neugierig, ideenreich, respektvoll, kooperativ, mutig, empathisch.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now I'll leave the roll call. Do we have Yasir with us yet?
We do not. He said he was going to be running late, so if you can continue on until he gets here. He might be about 20 more minutes.
Great. No problem. Is Frank in attendance yet? Frank Beaton? All right, let's move on. Samantha. Can you still hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, great. Pete Goldschmidt
I'm here.
and Katrin Taylor.
I'm here.
Thank you. Let's move to the affirmation of board findings pursuant to Government Code Section 54953E.
And this gives us an opportunity to meet virtually, and it's by affirmation of the board. And we do need to have a motion on that.
I'll move.
I will move. Thanks, Pete. I'll second. And so we can move by affirmation.
We need to do a roll call vote.
Okay, great. Thanks. Pete,
Yes.
Katrin,
Yes.
and I approve as well. Thank you. Now let's move to the approval of the agenda as presented. Does anyone wish to move the agenda as presented?
I can move. This is Katrin.
I'll second.
Thanks.
Before you vote, there's not a change to the agenda, but I do want to make a note that when it comes to the employee handbook, we've been doing a little back and forth with our legal on that. So we're going to table that until next month.
Thanks. So understanding that changed the agenda, let's take a roll call on it. Pete,
Yes.
Katrin,
Yes.
I also approve. Now let's move to public comment on general items in the board's jurisdiction. Chris, can you have your team lead this part?
Yes, and I'll ask Casey if you could read that and let us know if there's anyone from the public.
The public may comment on any item that is on the agenda or any other item that is in the board's jurisdiction. Members of the public who wish to comment during the board meeting may use the raise hand tool on the Zoom platform. Individual comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and the total time for this purpose shall not exceed 30 minutes per meeting. If an interpreter is needed for comments, they will be translated to English, and the time limit shall be 6 minutes. Individuals may speak 1 time per subject. The Board of Trustees reserves the right to mute or remove a member of the public if comments or actions disrupt the board meeting. Board members are prohibited from responding to or commenting on matters raised by the public that are not on the agenda. And at this time, it looks like there is no public comment.
And there's no one from the public who wanted to make a comment. Okay.
Right. Then we will move to the next item. We have the consent items. There's one item on the consent agenda tonight. That's the approval of the regular board meeting minutes of June 27th, 2022. Does anyone wish to move those?
I can move. This is Catherine.
Thanks, Katrin.
I'll second.
Second from Pete. Take a roll call on it. Pete,
Yes.
Katrin,
Yes.
and I also approve, even though I wasn't there, based upon the representation of my fellow board members, that it's accurate. Let's move into items for discussion action. The first item we have here is the executive director report. Chris, can I turn this over to you?
Yes, you can. Thank you. Let me pull that up. Okay, are you able to see that?
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay, I think I'll just move along the side. All right. Well, first of all, welcome. Hope everybody had a good summer and had a chance to get a little relaxation and a little recharging of energy. I certainly had a chance to do that, and it was nice. As Pete said a little earlier, yeah, a little too short, but we're getting there. And we always start with kind of the most important thing, which is the driver of our financing, which is our enrollment. Now, we haven't started school. School starts next Tuesday. We did start, by the way, today with our new teachers. We had 4 teachers who joined us this morning for onboarding, and that was great. Very excited about the group that we have. Tomorrow, all the teachers will be coming for tomorrow and the rest of the week as part of their pre-school professional development. And so that's great. So because school has not started yet, the enrollment is unknown, but we are at a point where we are a little above our projections, which is a good place to be right now. We know that there's going to be some no-shows on day one. That always happens, but we haven't had any kind of flood of I've moved to Idaho and I've moved wherever it might be. We had a few of those, but we've also had folks who are interested in joining. So it's been kind of a give and take, and we would expect that. So we do expect to meet our budget projection, which was 826 students, if you recall, in June when we approved the budget.
It was 420.
I'm sorry.
It
I'm reading what it says. That would be great, wouldn't it?
I was confused for a moment. There's like, wow, I don't
I'm
remember
going to just
being.
change that right there. My apologies. We'd have been interesting in 17 classrooms. So my apologies. 426 students. We do have no wait list at kindergarten. Which typically we do, but the fact that we only had 3 TK students last year, and that didn't mean a full class rolled in. So we've gone through the wait list at kindergarten. There's still full classes, but we are likely to have a little bit of space if people are want to join, and that's not typical. At the kindergarten level. We do have some other grades that have wait lists. It's kind of varies by grade. But we'll see where everything settles, and we'll give you a full report on enrollment at the next board meeting when it's real numbers and we know what they are. And so we're awaiting that first day for an actual count. No, there won't be 826 students at that time. So moving forward, COVID-19, believe it or not, is still with us. But we're have made some shifts and adjustments, and LA Unified has made some shifts and adjustments that definitely affect us. So about 2 weeks ago, LAUSD made an announcement of adjusted protocols that reflect kind of the endemic phase of we've got to live with it, we've got to figure it out and still serve kids and keep everybody safe and keep the schools open and keep as many kids eligible to be at school as possible. So a couple of things I wanted to share with you. Masking remains recommended. It's exactly where we were at the end of last year, where we had a lot of students choosing to be masked, a lot of staff, but it is a choice for indoor and outdoor masking. Vaccinations, we're really pushing that as our most strongly encouraged piece or kind of weapon against this is really encouraging vaccinations. All of our staff, of course, are vaccinated, but the numbers aren't there in the elementary levels. Higher, and I'm talking in general, it's higher at the high school level and even at the middle school level, but the elementary levels, there's a lot more folks that could not only get initial vaccinations, but also their booster shots. So we are definitely messaging that. Kind of the big switch is from PCR to antigen testing, and related to that is from surveillance testing, which we had been doing and been required to do, to response testing. And so the big difference here is the state Department of Public Health and the county Department of Public Health and LA Unified are all in agreement. This is different than things in the past. They're all in agreement that the antigen test is the best method of saying, are you contagious now? And that the PCR test with the lag time, and also that it's kind of hypersensitivity, it's not as accurate at this point in the pandemic. And so that moving to antigen testing is the direction, and a switch from surveillance testing, where we had been testing everyone, all staff and all students, but a switch to response testing. So one thing we're going to be doing is still requiring a baseline test. We'll be doing this with antigen tests and testing from home and having that reported to us. And then the other part of response testing is that if someone has any kind of symptoms, they need to be taking it, or if they have tested positive, and then to respond to that. So that's response testing is where we'll be moving. We've switched the health group that we're working with from Co-Verify to a group called Haluna Health, which is focused on this antigen testing and will provide us with all of the tests that we require that we can distribute to our families and staff. A couple other pieces of this: isolation and quarantine protocols from LAUSD were clarified. That's helpful. And the daily health screening, which was kind of the bane of everyone's existence, that families were doing that every morning. We had an automatic message that went out as an email and a response through Google Forms, and they filled that out. That is no longer required. LAUSD used to do it with what they call the daily pass, and they're no longer requiring that for entry onto the campus. So we are following suit with that, and we will not be doing our daily health screening. We are expecting everyone to now do their own screening, and that's what adults do, is watch out for the kids and make sure that they're not sending kids to school with any kind of symptoms. And if they are, that they're testing. And if they need a test, we have it. So that's our process from here. And as I mentioned, baseline testing, we will be doing in the 24 hours prior to school happening, expecting families to do that. We have plenty of tests on hand, and we'll distribute them throughout this week and at our events that are coming up, including Shine the School and the meet and greet, which happens on Monday, the day before school, where we get a ton of people there, and we'll have them available for making sure that everyone has that, and people can also stop by the office and pick one up. So a whole lot there with regard to COVID-19, but basically we're moving into the endemic phase of this, and we've got to live with it, and we got to figure it out. Now, that being said, could things change? Sure. And if things got intensely worse, or all schools coming back, and we see that there's a whole uptick in what happens at schools, we may have different things that happen, maybe masking, or maybe testing would be different. But right now, this is where we're at. The county has been monitoring where things are, and we are in a phase where we did have a rise in May and in June. That's leveled off and is now dropping, and so we hope that continues as we go. Any questions about the COVID-19 update? I know that that's a lot of information there, so I'll stop for questions. Hearing none. Samantha, is it okay to keep moving?
Yes, sorry, Chris, I was on mute. Yes. Pete or Catherine, do you have any questions?
I'm good, thank you.
All right,
I believe I'm good too.
great. I am as well. So
Okay,
please
I'll
move on, Chris. Thanks.
keep on moving, and then I'll stop for questions at the very end of my presentation. One, I wanted to give a Prop 39 update. The good news is we have signed the agreement for 17 classrooms, and we are just about to sign the FUA for those same classrooms. That's exactly what we had hoped for, which also includes 2 special education spaces and 1 office space. We think that is coming to about $260,000 as the cost for annually. That puts us that's kind of the spot we thought we'd be. We had prepared for that cost. We are. All right, hold on one second. Frank, we're at the meeting. We're in it right now. If you can join, are you able to join us? Perfect. Okay, sure. Bye-bye. Okay, I'm sorry for that. Frank will be joining us in a few minutes. So we are preparing or looking at a material revision, and that is actually on the agenda today, putting a proposal forth that would give priority to LAUSD applicants in the lottery. And this would help us to be a bit more of a neighborhood school, giving priority to LAUSD families. It also, doing that, gives us an opportunity to have a greater percentage of LAUSD families in our Prop 39 applications. I think it would also increase our the potential of increasing our socioeconomically disadvantaged group, which is something we've been wanting to do. And so the other piece of this is our focus is for TK, kindergarten, and 6th grade. We will need to focus on those, particularly intent to enroll forms, as they are our gateway classes. TK and kindergarten in particular, we want to be sure we have numbers, because that starts and then rolls through every year after that. And 6th grade with middle school, making sure we have numbers that sustain through 6th, 7th, and 8th grade as well. Not probably as critical at 6th grade because we have a 5th graders rolling forward, but particularly that TK in kindergarten is really important for the fall and intent to enroll forms. So that will be our focus. Okay, moving on from Prop 39. Our budget update. If you recall, last June, we approved a budget. And at the time, we said that we presented a balanced budget, but we thought it was going to get even a little better once Sacramento finished its job and the legislature finished its job. They had passed a placeholder budget in the middle of June, but it had not been finalized. Well, in the early part of July, they did finalize it. And I'm going to give you a little bit of information about it. And it's really information to the good with regard to budget, as we kind of had predicted, but we were afraid to not, count our chickens before they hatch. So the budget and the trailer bills that are behind it were approved in July. There was our local control funding formula, which we had budgeted for 6.5 increase, actually went as a 13.7 increase. And so that is going to put us in a positive place, probably to the tune of maybe $170,000, $180,000 to the good. And once we get our first financial statements that come in, and those don't come in, we don't do one for July. August is the first one, so you'll see it in September. We should have a clearer picture of what that means, but just the initial numbers, we think that's really great, and it's gonna allow us to, one, be sure we can start the year and do all the things we have to do, and make sure we're getting everyone, all the people on board that we need, and have redundancy with substitutes, which we didn't have last year, things like that. So the other good news, but it hasn't really hit yet, is the hold harmless we had talked about. It was approved, but there's a little caveat here. It is still being worked through by the auditors. There is a different agreement about whether it needs to be shown in last year, which we believe, and we showed it as, or whether it now has to be put into this year, which we don't think that should or will happen, but we have to wait and see. So, but the good news is the hold harmless is in place, that we had talked about. And what that means is that we were held harmless on the attendance drop we had from last year. And so that really helps put last year's budget, and we calculated that into last year's budget, and it allowed us to get all of our over allocation penalties put behind us, and it was a really good thing. So that did get approved, so that's good. Moving down to the next bullet, increased funding for expanded learning opportunities, the ELOP program, ELOP, is something that we had been looking at and said, wow, there's a lot of money in this. We need to really look at it. It has some involved requirements in that a 9-hour day is required, and the providing services on 30 intersession days. So that's a tall order, but we found out, if you recall, we talked about in June, we found out that we are able to work with our partners, including Prolific Kids, and we've had conversations over the summer with them about how we can do a joint agreement and a memorandum of understanding, which will allow us to make use of these funds, and those numbers seem to be growing with this new budget. Looking on even a little further with the budget, there were TK and pre-K planning money that was increased a little bit more than we had thought, and that's good news for us, in that we can really focus on planning for our expanded TK program. As you recall, TK is no longer just going to be kids almost 5. It's going to eventually be kids who are barely 4. So it's a really big change that happens over the coming years, and this gives us an opportunity to plan for that. There were also some new funding that came through in this budget. So we've got to shake this all out and figure out how to wisely spend this money, and do it on kids. A lot of it is the potential for hiring folks to come in after school and do tutoring and things like that. It's also, we can have our own teachers be doing that. We're a little concerned about overwhelming our own teachers, but we're going to make some things available. So we're thinking through that. There's called a Learning Recovery Emergency Fund, which didn't exist and now does exist. This one I think you're going to like: arts, music, and instructional materials. I really think this is an opportunity for us to support what we'd already been doing with our general fund, which is the arts programs that we have developed at the elementary and at the middle school level, and the support that we've had for our exploratory classes at the middle school level. Music and the potential for doing something either during the day or even after school, and making music available. That's been a big push with our parents. So this might be a funding source that we can make use of. And I just want you to be aware that it's out there and it's already a part of the budget. So now we got to just figure out how to do it right. There's some grants we could apply for on reading and literacy that I think might be of real interest to us. And then, of course, there's also the free breakfast and lunch. Last year, we did have lunch that was available free, and this year it'll be breakfast as well. So we're sorting that into our systems. But this is an exciting time that some money is really being invested in California towards kids. And our role is going to be, let's use it wisely. Let's spend it on things that work. And that help our kids, and let's make sure we're tracking what we're doing to see that it is having a positive effect on students and seeing what will move forward in the future. So that's the budget, and I'll just go to the last slide and then stop for questions. I want to let you guys know that we are preparing the campus for opening of next week, and we're kind of trying to reclaim the campus. Last year, we hit the ground running and we never felt like we caught up. And so we are really making an effort this year to start the year with things in place. And that includes getting the outside areas in particular looking good. I think we've always done a good job inside the classroom, and teachers always make their classrooms look really great. But the outside of the campus, we want to kind of reclaim that. And so interestingly, we have a new administrator at Marina Del Rey Middle School. So Ms. Machado was transferred to a different place, and his name is David Bonneau, and I have met him. We've already started connecting over things, and he seems to be I don't want to say pro charter, because that would be a miscalculation, but there's no anti-charter feeling from him, and I really appreciate that. And I think it's gonna give us a starting point. We did certainly enjoy working with Ms. Machado as well. She worked with us, and now we're gonna extend the same thing with the new administration. In particular, at the end of last year, I had spoken to our board member, Nick Melvoin, about there was some funding that was put forth about lunch tables that we never saw. COVID happened, and it was like this money went poof and went away. And so I'm appreciative, because I think he talked to somebody somewhere, and suddenly we got a call about it. And so we are working with Marina Del Rey Middle School administrative staff to look into new tables for our outside area. Now, I know this is going to be a little bit at a glacial pace, but I'm excited that we're moving forward, because you don't get anything happening in the end unless you started at the beginning. So that's what we're doing. We on our own purchased some outdoor furniture. This was a big push at our spring soiree, and some funding that came in at that time. So we've ordered tables and umbrellas and benches. They have not arrived yet, but we're hopeful that they might. They're going to come and actually also be assembled, because they're very large and very heavy, and we wanted to make sure that they get professionally assembled. So that was part of what we did. We have classified workers who are already on campus, where we typically don't at this time, but we wanted to make sure that we have all the things, and signage and everything we want to be fresh in a week's time. We've purchased planters that we are going to put drought resistant and very hearty plants in, that we can keep a hold of, but have some kind of a consistent look in our areas of the campus. So And we'll be working together towards this at the Shiner School on August 13th, where we'll also have a chance to prepare the garden a little bit more. The garden really was taking shape at the end of last year, and we want to hit the ground running with that. So a lot is happening, and I'll put it open to any questions going back to Prop 39 or the budget or preparing the campus. Samantha?
Thanks, Chris. So any questions? We'll start with you, Frank.
No questions. No comments.
Thanks. Pete?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments I think we want to think about. So Christian, you mentioned it sort of in passing, but I think it deserves a little more thought. Is that given the various monies that are going to be available for various programs, I think it would be prudent to, as you said, track it. And so I think thinking about I think it's very important to think about what specifically you're trying to address with these programs. So, you know, and I'm not picking on art, but you know, it's nice to have art supplies. But what specifically are you trying to accomplish with something like that, for example? And then, if you do, you know, pursue a particular program or materials or whatever it might be, then, you know, how are we making progress towards accomplishing those specific goals, or the reading programs or something, or for some set of students or whatever it might be. I think that's pretty important. And this dovetails into the other thing that I think is very important. And that is that I think that we shouldn't be I'm trying to find a word that's not too loaded here. We shouldn't be overly optimistic with the funds that we're getting this year and spend them all as if they will continue next year. You know, certainly we all can read the tea leaves in terms of the way the economy is potentially going. It's probably neither as bad or as good as you know the tail ends of the distribution say, but chances are they're not going to be the golden puppy that lays the egg that we have this year. And so I think it would be prudent to perhaps try to, if there's money that can be carried over, I think that would be a good thing to do. And maybe that's from the general fund from the 6.5% to the 13%. And I'm not sure what the rules are for that. And or to purchase programs or activities that span multiple years, so that we're not just spending something for this year and we go, wow, that was really great, and then next year we can't do it again, and it becomes a big deal. So maybe we do a little bit less, but we plan out into the future to the extent it's possible with the funds that we're getting. Those were basically my 2 points. Thanks.
Pete, if I could respond real quick, many of these are allowable over multiple years. So as we move forward, those points are really good. Yes, we need to do exactly that.
Thanks, Chris. Katrin? And also, if someone can let me into the room, I'm trying to join with my computer.
Okay, I just have a minor question or clarification, please. If you can go back to, I believe it is slide 5, the budget update.
Okay.
Yes, so I have a bad connection today, and my connection sort of cut out at the second bullet point when you were talking about the LCFF funding. Could you please say again what that is?
Sure. So the LCFF funding is our local control funding formula. It's what gives us our base money, and it gives us our supplemental and concentration money. Supplemental and concentration is a really small amount. We don't get a lot. Between 200 and 300,000 has been typical over the past a bit, but our base money is much more, going towards 4 million that comes in with that. So, but all of that together, we had budgeted in the budget for a 6.5 increase, and that number looks like it came in at 13.7. We're going to get more finalized numbers on this, and it'll be part of the presentation in September when we look at where we start the year and whether we may be presenting it as either here's where it is and we'll look at the budget from there, or we might even look and make a budget adjustment at that time based on this. But it's very good news because we were barely making a balanced budget, and now we feel like we have a little bit of breathing room. And I think Pete's point was really an important one, is that we also don't want to go too far and spend too much too quickly. Let's be sure we're doing it in an even way and possibly over multiple years, because many of these can be spent over multiple years.
And I agree with Pete's points there. And thank you for explaining LCFF again.
Okay.
Thanks, Katrin. So I too agree with Pete's points that we have to make sure that what we're introducing is stable and doesn't just become a one-year offering. And we can think about how to sustain those kinds of offerings if we can bring them in. But I don't have any other questions for you. So if we, do we move to the next point, or did you have anything else you wanted to cover on this one?
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
I'm sorry, I apologize for being late and being on the road here. But did we talk about potential enrollment? But is there anything closer we have? I have asked that question before we went into summer break or shortly after. Do we have any idea of where we land so far? Have people on the numbers, or was it mentioned in the first couple of slides?
It was actually Frank on the first slide. But basically, we're still waiting day one, which is the big, how many really show up. But we did not get a flood of calls like we did last year, where we had that big drop. We knew a lot of that during the summer. We have not seen that. That being said, we're enrolled a little bit over our number at the moment, that number being 426. We are, which we budgeted at. So we're a little over that. We expect a few drops, but we also have some that are a couple that are in the pipeline of people who are interested in joining at a late date. So we think that'll kind of wash itself out, and we should come in what we think will be very near our budget number at 426. And we'll know next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Frank. So with that, I see that the next agenda item is the review of the draft executive director goals and deliverables. I propose that we move that until Yasir is able to join the meeting, because I anticipate that's something he's talked with you about. So I'd like to move to agenda item C, if everyone's in agreement with that. We can return back to B once Yasir joins. Does that make sense?
Yes, to me.
Great. Thanks. So Chris, if we can move to agenda item C, that would be the public hearing provisional internship permit for Andrea Muniz.
Yes. We actually, C and D are connected. We have a public hearing that's required for an internship that we're doing, and then what's called a declaration of need for fully qualified educators. If you recall, we did that in the spring of last year, and we had said at that time, this will be something now that'll be ongoing right at the start of each year, and it could happen mid-year if a different need shows up. But basically, we would like to open the public hearing, and if there's any, we go ahead and, Samantha, if you can go ahead and call the public hearing open.
Thanks. I would like to declare the public meeting open on these items.
And if I could, I'll just explain that we have been looking throughout the summer. We did have our wonderful art teacher who took a different opportunity that was a really good one for her and her family. But we've been looking for a person who would be able to do our art position, which is a unique one in that it involves elementary. It also involves middle school. And we were able to find what we think is just a fantastic person. And we have moved forward in the hiring process with her, and we would need to, because she would be, as we have done in the past, have set up people on internships. She would be completing her internship, which I believe is through National University. And Casey, you can correct me if I'm not right on that one. We are, we hold a public hearing in case there's any questions about that.
Thanks. Frank, do you have any input you'd like to give on this point?
I have no comments and nor any questions.
Great, thanks. Pete?
I'm fine, thank you.
Katrin?
Nothing from me either.
And neither do I. Chris, is the public hearing, is there an opportunity
Yes.
for public input as well?
Absolutely.
So the floor is now open for members of the public who wish to participate on this item.
And I see no hands raised, so it looks like there's no public comment at this time.
Thanks, Casey. So with that, can we bring the public hearing to a close?
You certainly can.
Excellent. And then we'll move to agenda item D, which you identified as related, the declaration of need for fully qualified educators. Chris?
Sure. And this is a moving target because we may come back and say, oh, we ended up doing this or this or this, but we wanted to be sure that we had the qualification for the emergency BCLAD, which is bilingual cross-cultural LAD. I've got to get the old acronym is not in my head, but that is a something that all teachers have, a CLAD credential, but they don't always have the BCLAD credential specific to a language. And so we have Jennifer Rieg, who may be doing some German work on the German side this year, as well as Nazmia, who's our assistant principal. But she is also working with our middle school students with regard to German. And so we wanted to be sure that that declaration of need was listed, and also as the one that was mentioned in the public hearing for art. And that is Andrea Muniv, who would be a new hire for us. And I'm recommending approval of the declaration of need. Well, actually, it actually doesn't need approval. We just need to be sure we're putting it out there publicly.
Great, thank you. Frank, do you have any questions or comments on this?
No questions.
Pete?
Nothing from me, thanks.
Katrin?
Nothing, thank you.
Great, neither from me, so you're free to proceed with that one. Thanks, Chris.
Okay.
Let's move to agenda item E, and that was the approval of the independent study policy.
Okay.
Shall I move first and then we can discuss, or did you?
Yep.
Okay.
Please do.
Does anyone wish to move to approve this?
I'll move to approve.
Any seconds? I'll second. Chris, if we can go forward with discussion.
Sure. We have made some changes came through over the summer as part of the trailer bills of the budget. And related to independent study, we went to a seminar from our legal and there was a requirement that we submit yet again a change to our independent study. If you recall, on August 9th last year, we had some that came out of the budget then, and then another bill was passed mid-year, and in March we made some changes again, and now there are changes that were put in for this coming year. So we have, this was the changes that were listed here. We see some that were in red and some that were in green, which were little ones that I made, and some that are in blue that are the more recent ones that were given by our legal team. And so these are just based on law and what's required, and they're working this out currently with the auditors. But the changes that have happened since a year ago are all in red and blue, and as I said, a couple little green things that I did. But these are there. We would ask for the board's approval on changing this policy so that we can continue to run our independent study program moving forward. And this was what was available to look at.
Great, thanks, Chris.
Sure.
I'll go for questions now. I'll start with Frank. Do you have any questions or comments on this?
Is it limiting any of our ability? Is it just legal clarification, or is it limiting our ability to do independent study?
That's a great question, Frank. And the answer is it's very immaterial. It's just a matter of a few things that they tightened up and shifted around that I think actually will probably make it a little easier for us to run the program this year. But we needed to get those codified. And we're doing the same thing we did last year, where we had a staff person who's dedicated to this. We brought on Anita Collins last year, and she'll be continuing with us this year. She works part-time. We can pull her out of retirement because she knows this stuff, and we'll make sure that we're doing what we need to do to pull in independent study. I also don't think independent study is going to be as crazy as it was last year. I certainly hope not, because we will not be quarantining, and knock wood, whole classes or whole grade levels at a time like we had to at the beginning or in middle of last year.
I think we're all knocking on wood with you on that one, Chris. Pete, did you have any questions?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Katrin?
Just one. When I reviewed the document, I was wondering, just again, trying to anticipate anything that may or may not happen. I was wondering if there's value in adding sort of a general emergency provision as a qualifying reason for independent study. Say something really unforeseen happens to a family at Goethe, and they just need to pivot for a limited time and perhaps, I don't know, go abroad for some weeks or so during the school year, which of course would not be a qualifying reason normally. So I was wondering, sort of a catch-all in case something happens, it's significant, the family is asking for flexibility. Does that make sense?
There is some flexibility that's given to the executive director or designee that can extend and so I could take some things that are outside the list into account for that. Honestly, I would do it reticently, but I would certainly listen. And you know, we've done that in the past where there's been extenuating circumstances and we're able to do that. So yes, I think that is able to be done within what's here.
That's perfect then. Thank you.
Great. Okay. And do we have yours here with us yet? Looks like it. I don't have any further questions. My questions were covered. So with that, is the board ready to, I'll call for a vote on the approval on this? Frank?
Yeah, AA.
Pete?
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
And I approve as well. So thanks, Chris. You're clear on this one. Let's move to the next item, which is the approval of executive director to develop a material revision to the to provide increased priority for all USD students in the lottery. You can take this one, Chris.
So yes, I can share. This is something that was discussed at our strategic planning and kind of came out of the discussions there in hopes to create.
Sorry, we need a motion for this. Please.
Thanks, Biggie.
I move.
Does anyone?
I'll
Thanks,
second.
Frank,
I'll second.
and seconded by Pete. All right, thank you. Keep going, Chris.
Sure. So the discussion was about how do we increase diversity? How do we build our socioeconomic families are struggling socioeconomically? How can we build and support for that as well? We also had discussion about being a neighborhood school and how that would affect our positively affect our Prop 39 applications, because the more LA Unified students you have, the better that turns into. So it's kind of a whole series of pieces. So I'm recommending that we apply for a material revision to our board, and I've worked with been working with YMC over the summer, and this would be the first step of creating basically this resolution, which I shared with you guys. The whereases have some background information, but the information, be it resolved that the lottery preferences, basically we would set up our lottery as we would do what we've done in the past, which is have a lottery for our founding parents and employees, and so that's language that's consistent. It would be, as we did before, siblings of students admitted. So siblings get the next level of priority, and that would be done as then we draw all the names out of that hat. And then after that, we would draw all the names out of the LA Unified applicants and draw those out. And then we would draw from those outside Los Angeles Unified and draw those names out. We would continue to give an additional priority to those who are in potential for free and reduced price meals, which is a socioeconomic factor that we can look at, and giving 2 tickets to those who would qualify in each one of these lotteries. And only 1 ticket would be for the one without free and reduced price meals. And so we think that this would have a couple of positive effects. We think it could help our free and reduced price socioeconomically challenged students. We think it would help bring more of a neighborhood draw. And we think that can have a positive effect on our Prop 39 application. With that, basically, this is directing me to work through legal and propose this to the district. There's a lot of politics involved in that. Just because I can anticipate some questions that might come in, would those politics be negative towards us? We've had conversations with our legal, and nobody gives us a totally straight answer. But what they do tell us is that what we're asking is not unreasonable. This is something that it makes sense to serve LA Unified kids on an LA Unified campus, and so that it should be something that moves forward, and that we have a very good rationale for it. So I'm making that recommendation. I've talked with Yasir about this. I don't know whether he's here yet, but he is aware of the pieces of this as well, because he would be signing this on behalf of the board. But I'm very comfortable with having the board move forward and approve this resolution, and then I can move forward on next steps. Samantha?
Thanks, Chris. Frank, let's start with you. Do you have any questions or comments to Chris on this?
I do have a comment, and so legal is it's charter school, everybody in California can apply, and just weighing this towards LAUSD, which I'm okay with. This cannot, it's not going to be challenged by LAUSD. Will it be challenged by anybody outside of LAUSD, like a disgruntled parent who didn't get in and feels that this is, not in accordance with, the overarching, principle of a charter school? Have they commented?
I'm happy to respond to that. I think anybody can be disgruntled and anybody could raise a concern. I think it was very clear from our legal that we're on very good legal ground, that this is common practice across the state, and nothing. The facilities are LAUSD facilities, and that really is why someone from an outside the district really wouldn't have any kind of standing.
Thanks. Pete?
Yeah, I guess the only comment is there a way of doing this without having a material revision? And the only reason, it's perfectly fine, I think. The only thing is, if at such time, and maybe this is looking too optimistically, too far in the future, but if at some time we get into our own facility, then this is something we may not want to do again, and so then that requires another material revision. And if LAUSD is still our authorizer, then I could foresee there being more issue in reversing this if we so chose. I don't know, I'm just musing, I guess, but something to think about.
If I can respond to that one as well. That's a really, really thoughtful point, Pete. I think you could be right on that. I think our opportunity to adjust this is at our renewal, which is in 2025. So I think that would give us enough time to know where we're at in terms of facilities. But I guess my sense is I'd rather roll the dice on the safety side of this that could, I think, improve both our socioeconomic level as well as, like I said, be more of a neighborhood school. And eventually, if we move out of here, then we need to figure out that piece of it. But I think it's a really good point.
Thanks, Chris. Katrin, any questions or comments?
Yes. What is our current split? And if you don't know it exactly, that's fine, between LAUSD and non-LAUSD students or applications.
Over the years, we have gone somewhere between 70 and 80% has been LAUSD. We're actually dropped from 70% to 69%. So we're at the low end of that. And that's been a trend over the last couple of years, and not really sure there's a reason or anything like that, but it has shifted. There's been years where it's been as high as 78%, something like that. Right now it was at 70, and I think it actually ticked just below that at 69.
And so the rest, I assume, is what, Culver City?
Culver City, Inglewood, Santa Monica, Beverly Hills, but probably largest is Inglewood and Culver City.
Okay. Thank you. That's interesting. Of course, both of the school districts you just listed have very different sort of demographics and would have a different impact on student diversity. But I understand what you're saying also about funding allocation, Prop 39. So it makes sense to me.
The other thing I would mention, if I can, is just that I don't think this is going to have a dramatic change one way or the other right away. It's going to be a trickle effect, a little bit each year. You might see over years a little bit of a change. I don't think you're going to see, like, one year a huge shift in socioeconomic level or a huge shift in LA Unified versus non-LA Unified. Because so much of it, this is just for the lottery, which happens in March. And we get a ton of things that happen, applications that come after the lottery or early April. We get a ton of things that happen after that. So that's what I would expect is a little shift, but not like something dramatic.
Thanks, Chris. I was wondering about that charter revision process itself. How long do we anticipate this to take, and how many, internal resources does it take? I know that we'll be working with legal on this, but will it be a diversion of resources to see this through?
Yeah, it'll take some of my time. I don't think it'll take a huge tap of our organizational resources, and we'll put some legal funding into it, but it's not huge amounts. Probably a few $1,000s in total. But what Samantha, would you say again the first thing you asked?
How the process works itself, about how long should we expect to understand this would take?
So there used to be no clock on this. And so often material revisions would sit at Beaudry and never see the light of day. They just sat. That can't happen anymore because of some of the new rules that have been developed and crafted. Really, CCSA has done a great job of trying to work through that. So there is a 120-day timeline, so 4 months. What we would hope is we would get this put into the next window, which is in the middle of August, and we would be knowing some point September, October, November, December. We hope January we would know, and that's really when we launch into lottery phase. So that's what we're hoping to know something. There can be some, as I said, political games that play that can slow things down, but at least there is a timeline, and there didn't used to be.
Thanks. And one other question, are there risks to us in moving forward with this application at this time?
The only risk is someone using it as someone like a board member using it as an opportunity to try to badmouth us or something like that. I don't see that happening because this is basically saying we want to serve LA Unified kids. So that it would seem counterintuitive. I can't promise there isn't political backlash, but I don't think there will be.
Thanks. Any further questions from my fellow board members?
No.
All right, let's move forward to a vote on this. Frank?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
And I approve as well. You're here to proceed. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda is the approval of the 2022 spring consolidated application.
Okay. Do we happen to have Ryan here at the meeting?
No.
Okay, I know he's been working on multiple things, so I will share with the board. As you know, we used to do the spring consolidated application, which is the application for federal funding. It used to be, it would come and go because we didn't used to apply for federal funding. We are now applying for federal funding. This just came in, and so you're approving or directing me to approve in these areas. This is specific for Goethe International Charter School. We are going to apply for Title I Part A. So that's the Title I money that we received, which we, if you recall, we went through and made it a school-wide program for Title I, which allows us to serve all of our kids, which we think is really good. Title II is professional development and improving teacher quality. We get some money for that. And Title IV, which we've used is to kind of pump up Title I. You can use it and put it in any way, but it's basically for any programs that support learning. So it has a lot of different ways to spend it. We've typically put it into beef up our Title I funding and go from there. The application process itself, we will be doing a certification of assurances saying we'll follow the rules, which include protected prayer, which is a requirement in the federal regulations that have been in there for about 20 years or so. Application for funding, and that if we use time accounting, that only eligible employees will be using a substitute system for time accounting. Typically, that's for our employees on a split assignment where we pay for part of it, their salary with Title I, for instance, and another with general fund. We try to avoid that whenever possible, but if we do it, we will make sure that they're that we're following all rules and it's only those eligible employees. So I'm recommending that we direct me to complete the consolidated application with the support of XED, and we apply for those 3 federal funds, Title I, Title II, and Title IV.
Did we have a motion on the table? Did anybody move? I'm sorry.
We did not, so it's time
Yeah.
to move before we have some more discussion on that.
Yeah.
Would anyone like to move?
I move.
And would anyone like to second?
I can second. This is Katrin.
Great, Frank moves, Catherine second. Let's go to questions or comments. Frank,
No questions.
Pete,
No questions.
Catherine,
No questions.
and none from me either. Let's move to a vote. Frank,
It's a yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Catherine,
Yes.
and I approve as well. Move to the next agenda item, which is the 2022-2023 Family Handbook. Do we need a motion on this one, Chris?
Yes, we did.
All right,
I
would
move.
anyone like to move
I
to
move.
approve? I heard Frank. Would anyone like to second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Pete. Let's go to Chris. Thanks.
Thank you. Every year we bring this forward to the board at this time. We revise and review and revise our family handbook. I'd like to thank Nazmia Akbaba, who dove into this project. It's a 100+ page document that we work with our legal on as well. And it needs to be updated with new names and new pieces, and so Nazmia had an opportunity to go through this quite a bit. She did a bunch of it while she was traveling in Europe, and so I thank you for that. No major changes or shifts that are a part of the family handbook. It is very similar in form with just annual updates from the previous year.
Great. Any questions or comments, Frank?
No questions.
No questions.
Catherine?
No questions. One comment. Number one, it looks really good. So good job. Very well done, the update. Number two, just rereading everything about our philosophy, what the IB is, what our whole child approach is, made me think that maybe there's a way to sort of communicate that in an additional way to our parents so that they better, well, sort of internalize the concept and buy into it as well, because I think it's wonderful what we're doing there. If we have sort of almost like parent education, learn it lunches, or some kind of event to communicate how this works, what we're doing, and why it is so unique and so good, I feel like we can sell it more. So I guess that's just my only comment that I have.
Thank you.
And I don't have any other questions or comments on this one, so let's move to approval. Start with Frank,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Catherine,
Yes.
and I approve as well. Thank you. So let's move to the next item on the agenda, which is the employee handbook, but I understand we are tabling this item for tonight. Is that correct, Chris?
Yes, I would ask that we table this item. We had a little back and forth with our legal, and we want to be sure it is really properly vetted, and then we'll get the final bit approved. And we take that back to our staff and give them the most recent version of that. And so that's okay to do in September, which we will do. So if we can table that, I would appreciate it.
Right. So with the agenda, does that leave just executive director goals remaining for discussion tonight, or are there other items?
There were, yes, there was another item.
Sorry, I've lost my agenda here for a second.
I can pull it up.
There are two more items. I think item J, approval of extension of power for Executive Director, Dr. Chris Jones.
Yes,
And then-
the all powerful executive
Yes,
director.
thank you.
Yeah,
Don't want to
yeah.
start
Start with that one.
I move.
All right. All
I
right,
move.
Frank moves. Do we have a second on this one?
I'll second.
Great. Second from Pete. Take it away, Chris.
We've done this before, and we actually lulled over the summer, so glad we didn't get hit with something. But I think it's worthwhile to just have this as a safety valve. You know, I haven't really had to use all my vast powers, but just knowing that if we faced a crisis, I could make a decision related only to COVID-19, and that this would be continued until December 31st. We kept pushing this forward, a month at a time, and then 3 months at a time, and now 6 months at a time, but we'll see. So I am recommending that we continue that forward.
Thanks, Chris. Frank, do you have any questions?
I'm ready to vote.
All right, Pete,
No questions.
Catherine,
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
and for me as well. Let's move to the vote. Frank,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Catherine,
Yes.
I approve as well. And let's go to agenda item K, review and approval of employment contract for Francis Fenelon with auxiliary schedule compensation. Would anyone like to move this item?
I move again.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Pete. You can move and I can second if you know. So we'll move the agenda item along.
Either way, let's go. Okay, I'll move you second.
Yeah,
All
okay, I
right.
second.
Pete moves, Frank seconds. All right, let's go, Chris. I think we're ready.
Right. This will similar to last year where we had actually two employees who were hired in who fell below the minimum exempt salary level, which is tied to minimum wage and then put out for exempt employees out to who work on an annual salary, not hourly. And we improved our salary scale, if you recall. Thank you, board. We improved our salary scale and bumped it up 5% at the in June, and it brought us. So now we only have one person who is still just below. So this is bringing that person up to the minimum exempt salary level, and so I would recommend that we do that. This is a teacher who we had last year, is in very good standing with us, and we want to make sure that they are receiving the legally required amounts. As a caveat, I am going to say I'm hoping that we'll be able to move to a point that we can get to where the bottom of our salary scale is exactly where the minimum exempt salary is, so we don't have to do this in the future.
Thanks, Chris. Frank, any comments or questions?
I will admit I didn't understand that. To be perfectly honest. So she is below minimum wage?
Yeah, well, the minimum wage is an hourly amount, and that number then translates for exempt employees who are paid an annual salary, that there's a minimum annual salary that ties to that metric. And as a result, even when we bumped up our pay scale, the 5% what we did, there were still, I think, two in the very first column, the first two steps, and in the second column, the first step that didn't quite meet it. And so we want to make sure that we need to make sure that this person is whole, because they need to be provided the minimum exempt amount.
So in other words, we're paying her the delta between what she's not reaching and what she should be reaching between that. So we're paying her more on an hourly basis. Is that correct?
Forget the hourly piece of it. That's probably confusing. Everything you said prior to that was exactly accurate. So we're just paying the delta between the two, and this is what's legally required for her.
Okay, I'm okay with that. Thank you.
Pete, any comments or questions?
No comments or questions. Thank you.
Katrin?
No, we have to do that.
I don't have any comments or questions either. So let's take it to a vote. Frank?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
I approve as well. So going back to the agenda, we do have that item that we pushed back to the beginning or to the end until time that Yasir could join. That was on Chris's executive director goals.
I'm happy to table that until September. I don't think either way it's fine with me. I put it out there, keeping in mind that I am working there 60%. So the averaging out to 3 days a week, not 5 days a week. So I did pare things down to what I think is just the key things that I really want to get accomplished. So if you want to table that to the next time, that's fine with me too.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards tabling it because I'd like to have Yasir as part of this conversation. Do other board members have concerns with tabling it?
No, I
Frank?
agree. Sorry.
I have no. Yes, we should table it because
Okay.
Yazia is the taskmaster of that.
I agree as well.
Right. So with that, tabling that one, let's move to the end of the agenda, which is for new business, next steps and follow-up meeting times. Chris?
So our next meeting is in September, and I'm sorry I don't have my calendar. Biggie, date of our next board meeting is September.
It's September 19.
Thank you so much. September 19th is our next meeting. And are there any items that we need to be looking at?
I want to put on the agenda budget, where we stand on enrollment budget projection. So let's, it's always on, but finance committee should meet before when initial enrollment is in and stabilizes hopefully after 2 or 3 weeks. And so let's take another look at the budget. Also what have Pete said in regards to, spending all the funds which are coming in or not coming in. And so let's make it a point and just look at this again.
Yeah.
Any other items to put on to the next meeting? Pete?
Sorry, no.
Katrin?
No, I'm not
All
confused
right.
now.
So then I think we move to the last item on the agenda, which is adjournment. Does anyone move to adjourn the meeting?
I'll move.
Thanks, Pete. Do we need to take a vote on adjournment?
Doesn't look like it.
All right.
Biggie, do you want to have a vote?
We always do one, so for consistency, I would do one. So we need a second and then the vote.
All
I
right.
second.
Frank seconds. Let's call for a vote. Frank?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
And I also approve. Thanks, Christy, and your team for a great meeting.
Oh, thank you for running a tight one. And you're going to give Yasir a run for his money. So thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate it. And members of the public, we thank you for joining us today.
Ciao.
Thank you. Have